Welcome back into the Pod is the Roof, the official UNC basketball podcast of the Field of 68. I am your host, Riley Davis, joined today for the second time on this program. We have Tate Frazier back. Tate Frazier, he of One Shining podcast fame, just a good dude to talk hoops with, whether it's ACC specific, North Carolina specific, or just the sport as a whole. Glad to have him back on. Tate, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Riley. Thanks for having me on. I am happy to be back, a two-time guest now. I'm officially on the board. It makes sense. It matters because we have a lot to talk about, and it's not good things because Carolina basketball. We were just talking off air before we got on air about how last year at this time, Carolina fans are patting themselves on the back. I remember coining it the Carolina Blueprint. It's back on track. Hubert Davis has found the magic of Roy Williams. Flash forward to the present times, and who knows? We'll see what happens. But right now, the conversation is not that positive. It's quite negative, and I'm doing my best to do some spin zone out here, but we'll get into all the minutia of it. There's a lot going on in Tar Heel land.
Yeah, Tate, to simplify it in its most basic terms, if I can borrow from an old bit of yours, the Bubble Boys might win this year.
Yeah, they already won. I already gave it to them. The amount of bubble boys that are in my life that have tried to dance on my grave before, like people like Mike DeCourcy, right, a former coworker at Fox Sports, like
Mm.
early on in the bubble, next four out, first four out, he didn't have Carolina in earlier than everyone else as expected, and I responded accordingly, and I just said, "You win this year." So
Yeah.
tip of the cap. Salute the service. We understand that these things happen. And, I was willing to fight the fight in 2023 because I thought
Mhm.
that it was more of a narrative based decision. But right now, as it currently stands with the quad record, I understand it. So I
Yeah.
let it pass. Tip of the cap, like I said.
I'm with you. 22 and 23 was like Bubble Boys they are not going to win over us. We are a
Right.
united front. This year, like even 2 weeks ago, I think Lenardi still had UNC. There's a last four by or a last four in. And I'm like, Joe, let it go, man. Like you can go ahead and remove them. Give them make this team a little bit hungrier. Don't let them think that they've earned this yet. And just the way that they've been playing, I've said this on this podcast. I've said it on content for sleepers. It's just been a really, really frustrating year. There's no other way to put it. Like, not a lot of bright spots. And I thought with you on Tate, we could take a review of like the year so far, look at the state of the program. Really, the first thing I wanted to ask you about was just where you're at with this team in this moment, and kind of your journey with how you got there, with looking at what you expected UNC to be in the preseason. If there was a moment early on in the year, maybe early on in conference play, where it hit you like, okay, this team might just not be it. Um, or even if you want to highlight a bright spot in this area as well. But like, what have you seen out of, yeah, just in general, tell us what you've seen and where your like emotional and mental processing has been with it.
Well, when we started the season, Riley, as you know, North Carolina is number 9 in the country, preseason number 9. RJ Davis, ACC Player of the Year, is coming back. You've brought in a 5-star wing forward hybrid that's supposed to be similar to what Hubert Davis seems to love, right? And he's potentially going to be a top 5 pick in Drake Powell. So that is the
Mhm.
dream that you are telling and selling yourself going into the season. They're going to play at Kansas. They're going to get a great test early. And guess what? They look great in that test. And in that Memphis game where they go into an exhibition game on the road, Penny Hardaway is pressing in an exhibition game. Carolina, Seth Trimble, they find a way to win that game without RJ Davis, which was really impressive based on what Memphis looked like in the non-conference. Right now, Memphis getting hurt in their own conference because people treat them like the Super Bowl, but that's a discussion for another day. So you start with optimism. I feel like by the time you get to Maui and you face Auburn, that's the first reality check, similar to last season when they played UConn, where you're like, okay, there's levels to this. There is a number 1 team right there in front of us.
Yep.
It is not us. That is Auburn. I think the Dayton game was a nice test of character. The fact that they fought back in that game, that was a nice moment for this season. They could have easily lost that game. Michigan State was when you started to feel like, oh, wow, this is getting off the rails a little bit. But Michigan State's a good team. I really like their team. They have a lot of depth. They probably can make a run this year. So it doesn't look as bad in retrospect. But in the moment, you're like, come on, what's happening here? The Alabama game, you thought they'd get up, build themselves up for that game. It's just a complete dud, as I like to coin it, a flat egg. Nate Oates is sending pictures via Steven Gonzalez to me of him in the Dean Dome. I did not like to see that. That will haunt me for quite some time unless he, decides to wear some Carolina blue. Who knows?
Yeah.
But early on in the season, by December 2nd, Carolina is out of the AP poll, right? So the season from the start of November to 1 month, it was a quick Band-Aid rip for this season to already be off the rails. We saw this 2 years ago, right? So it's turned into an every other year thing. We were hoping that last year Hubert Davis figured out the blueprint. I do think that Hubert needs a four. They were hoping it was Drake Powell. They thought it could be Jalen Withers. Withers does Withers things. Sometimes it's magnificent, right? He's very Caleb Love-esque. Sometimes it's amazing. We just saw it in Syracuse. It was amazing. Sometimes it's the worst thing you've ever seen, and it's the most untimely and unseemly thing you've ever seen, right? So they have not been able to figure out the four. Brady Manick is the ideal version of this, the best version of this that we saw. Took later in the year for him to get there because Dawson
Mhm.
Garcia was taking the spot. But they have not figured out that spot. They have not figured out the starting five. They have not figured out the finishing five. Now they're responding to, basically the zeitgeist telling them they need a GM. And now they're, basically saying we will do that because they have the pitchfork out against us. So I don't know. Just the season got off the rails very quickly. The Alabama game was when I first started to wave the white flag that I was worried. And I feel like that was most fans because that felt like a game you could at least compete, and Alabama just completely outclassed them.
Yeah, that Alabama game for me, it's interesting. We already got a Steven Gonzalez reference on this pod. I love Gonzo, great dude.
Great guy.
He was someone who I had connected with, and like I just texted him because I was covering that game and texted him like, "Yo, are you down in the media room?" Like, I think they had Bojangles before that game as the pregame meal. Which anytime like media gets Bojangles, I'm like, "All right, Carolina's about to win this game. Let's go. I'm
Right.
I'm up for this.
Exactly.
They're up for this." And so I go down. Gonzo was on the court at that point. I'm just like chopping it up with him for a little bit, and I'm truly, I kid you not, watching every single player on Alabama's roster throw down windmill dunks in the layup line. Like every player on their team has size, length, athleticism, and I'm watching our guys just like shooting layups. I'm like, oh, this could get bad quick. It was like at that point where I'm watching like Mo Diabate, even the guys who aren't stars, like Mo Diabate, Darion Reed, throwing down these nasty dunks. That's like, oh, this is just a different level of talent here. For me, Tate, yeah, I think you hit on a lot of good stuff. Like going back to the preseason.
I know I went big picture on it. I mean,
Oh
there's a
yeah, no,
lot to
you're
get into
good.
the minutia, but I was trying to paint the picture in general that by December 2nd, right? If you're a Carolina fan or someone who is watching them and you're pulling for Carolina, you're already worried about where the season could go off the rails. And
Yeah.
we've already seen this version of the blueprint, back in 2023 by, the Pete Nance game was the one game in MSG. This year it's the UCLA game, right?
hmm
It's kind of hitting the same notes.
That's a great point. And even you could go back to the first game of the season. This isn't directly correlating to the 2023 year. It's actually a step further down. UNC beats Elon by 14. If you go back to the 2020 season, the Cole Anthony year, before it all sputtered, that Carolina team also beat Elon by just 14. That was when it was like, okay, my alarm bells are going off. And
Well, Riley, that was another one where Elon had more size, right? Like I'm looking at Elon's big men, I'm looking at their front court. I'm like, how is Elon's front court dominating this game right now?
I,
That's one red flag, to
yeah.
say the least. So that
and,
was not good. I'm
and I,
okay with a guard. I'm okay with a guard like going off and having 30
right.
and making a bunch of threes. But when there's like a guy who's 2 inches taller than anyone on our starting five, and he's like getting easy layups on the block, that's when you're concerned.
That's problematic. It's the whole concern all off season was the big man. That was driven into the ground. That was something I was really skeptical of. Despite I had Carolina fans in my life who were like, "Nah, dude, trust the process." Jalen Washington breakout season. Vin Allen Lubin's good. Like, bro, I watched Vanderbilt. I don't know if this dude is Carolina like starting level quality. But even at like media day, this was back in October. I started sipping the Kool-Aid a little bit because how highly every player spoke of Jalen Washington. Like Elliot Cadeau was highlighting his rim protection, his wingspan, and everything to where I started thinking like, okay, we might really get a Washington breakout year. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened for him, but to like even ease the blame off the five position, I think The this team's
Yeah,
issues go.
it's not on Jalen
Yeah,
Washington to have turned into a
correct.
totally different person, or to ask a guy who's 6'8" to play the 5 spot. I mean, we've asked everyone on this group in the starting five to play up a position
Mhm.
and to have more size and length on top of them, and then to be better than they were a season ago.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
tough ask.
And I think the issues go deeper than the 5-man spot. Like I think it's the front court as a whole. There are guys being asked to play roles that they shouldn't. Like you mentioned the Jalen Withers experience where it's great when he can play 24 minutes and knock down three threes like he did against Syracuse. Also, the way that he like catches.
He has a clock. Like there's like as I watch Jalen Withers, like he does like you'll be like, what an incredible catch, like what an incredible dunk, what an incredible three in the corner. Who is this man? But there's like a ticking clock. It's like going down. You're like, if we don't get him out of this game soon, something
Yeah.
bad's gonna happen, you know? And sure enough, it does.
What's crazy is like I mean, Withers. So he didn't play in the second half of three of Carolina's five games leading into the Syracuse game, then just plays 24. And it's I think the funniest thing about it is like he catches the ball so casually on those catch and shoot threes. It's just like major, let me see that thing energy and just like let it fly. When it goes in, it's hilarious. I mean, it's great to watch, but yeah, it's
I appreciate his confidence. I think
for
it is
sure.
special. And I do think this team needs somebody to step up and have that confidence, because that's what Brady Manick basically did in 2022. He was just like, this is unacceptable and watch this. And then Caleb Love is very similar to, I mean, he is the experience. I mean, Caleb Love, the highest of highs
Mhm.
and the lowest of lows. I mean, that year they just kind of caught fire, which Jalen Withers caught fire against Syracuse, which is encouraging because, like I said, that four position is the pivotal one. And if they could play Drake at the three and
Mhm.
play Withers at the four and play Lubin or Washington serviceable minutes at the five,
Mhm.
then they have an actual front court. Then they have an actual team that can compete.
Uh, Even going back to that Syracuse game, I thought the most encouraging thing was like they were in a position to just play that 8-man rotation. There was no
Right.
need, there was no big deficit to overcome where Hubert's just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, where we get like a Cade Tyson appearance or a Ty Claude appearance. Free my guy James Brown. I'm
Yeah.
he's James Brown is still the rant. Like I don't think
He's
he's
still got
probably
size. I mean,
yeah,
I'm okay with size and I'm okay with fouls. I'm not okay with putting out a team on the floor that looks like they are the JV team.
yeah,
That's what I'm not okay with,
yeah.
especially when there is size that is on the bench that could make it more of a fair fight. They did it against Clemson. They
Mhm.
didn't do it against Duke. I don't know if that was some sort of gamesmanship where they were like, we're not going to win this game anyway, so we're going to save everything for when we play in Chapel Hill. I don't know, because there are some things that go into that, but the season is on the line. There's no time for gamesmanship.
That actually will lead into my next question or next topic of just observing. Is there anything that this UNC team could do to change how you view them, slash, can they be fixed? On February 18th, the day we're recording this. Tate, I know your previous employers inside Carolina, or is that
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
I love Sherelle McMillan. He's always gonna like deliver the
Sherelle's a truth teller. You need truth
yes,
tellers in this time.
exactly. He is,
Yes.
and I think it was on one of their podcasts recently where he's like, at this point in the season, like no one is changing that much. Where I'm like, I appreciate the reality check, Sherelle, but would you agree with that, or do you think there's any sort of blueprint that could lead to more consistency even this late in the season that could get Carolina like end of the year on like a 6-2 or 7-1 stretch, positioning themselves like at least somewhat nicely going into the ACC tournament?
Well, I mean, they have the schedule to do it, and they have the
Yeah.
conference to do it. I mean, it's the ACC. It is the worst the ACC has ever looked in my lifetime. I've watched a lot of ACC basketball, and this is ridiculous. It's honestly unacceptable. I understand that there are a lot of injuries and things at play that are, a larger picture discussion about, the ACC and who they are and who they want to be and what coaches need to be in the ACC. But look what Brad Brownell is doing at Clemson. He's doing a great job. He's got a really good team. I think they're going to be able to get to the second weekend if things break their way. So there are good examples that are happening in the ACC, but at large, Carolina has a chance here down the stretch run to win these games. I think they have enough talent to at least compete in these games. That was the frustrating part of the Clemson game. That was the frustrating part of the Duke game. It felt like an accepted defeat, which
Mhm.
is not a Dean Smith Carolina way for such a group of coaches to be so the Carolina way. You don't get it. You have to be a part of it to get it. We only hire inside the family who get it. And then when people that even went to the school like myself and you and that know it, and they're like they don't get it either, you know. But then when we watch the energy and effort, like I just watched a clip from the 2016 national championship game. Chris Jenkins was just on my show, and Chris Jenkins, you know, he enjoys sharing the clip. But I was watching the clip from a different vantage point. Like Justin Jackson, his feet are like bouncing up and down on the court, like while he's supposed to be standing there. Like the amount of energy and effort and the amount of like anticipation that they play with is Carolina basketball. That is the Carolina way, and this staff knows that, and they know what the standard is. And I understand you don't want to put like negative stories out there or put like negative energy towards your players, but there is a standard. They know what the standard is. I think if they play to the standard that they know is there, and we all know is there, they could win out every game, and they could at least compete against Duke. And if they do that, they should be in the conversation to at least make the tournament if they get, into the semifinals of the ACC tournament. So it's all there for the taking. It's not completely done yet. I feel like the people that want to just go ahead and kick the bucket on the season are a little bit sky is falling type, fans anyway, and they're usually the loudest. But Hubert, to me, I know there's a lot of people that have tried to reach out. I know that there are situations where like they keep it very tight. And I feel like if they would maybe just accept the hug and hug back, then the media would treat him a little bit better. Then, coaches around the country might be more willing to help them out and give them a phone call and say, hey, this kid on my team really wants to play for North Carolina and he doesn't fit here. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that they could be more warm as a program, and then the powers that be around them and that surround them would respond and reciprocate, and I think that the program would grow, and I think Hubert can be a part of that growth, and I don't understand the need to shut out everybody. So that's just like my bigger kind of conversation point about where the program is, and I think that can be addressed internally. And I think that they can be better moving forward. And I, hope that will lead to better basketball too.
I would think that's an incredible point as far as diagnosis for like, me, if I'm being honest, I'm definitely more on the side of like sky is falling fandom at this point in the year. And that's
And
been
that's
some of
fair.
that's been some of my criticism with the staff is it is so insular. It is so like no information gets out, no outside voice is needed. I mean, even you're seeing like Buzz Peterson and Mitch Kupchak helping conduct this GM search, but somehow they're candidates as well. It's
Well, those are my guys. Like, I mean, I love Mitch Kupchak, and like Mitch
mhm,
Kupchak should be running that search or at least involved at some level because he knows how to put a pro approach together. But are
mhm.
we actually going to do that? That's the
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
Or is this
yep, yep,
all like a stunt to
yep.
make people say, hey, they're trying to figure it out?
Yeah,
That's the
that's it's a great question, and I think even touching on the way Hubert addresses media and stuff is like sometimes I'm just can we not lie? Can we not sit up here and say that it's like the offense isn't stagnating when like we watch it happen? And I don't know. Sometimes I want a little like the fiery like nobody believes in us type energy instead of like just the defeat. The defeat after like Clemson or Duke. Like we felt that as fans, like a little energy, a little fire from the coach, I think could go a long way for the program and to getting guys on your side, getting them to believe in you. And because I do think like outside perception matters. Like coaches can try to say that it doesn't, but it definitely does.
Well, look at how I mean it's something that I hyper whatever complain about sort of in a character way, but the reality is that Duke knows how to make sure that they are available, to make sure that they are warm, to make sure that people want to talk about them and they want you to talk about them. They want to share their stories, their narratives, their players, all that sort of stuff. Like when you shut everybody out,
Mhm.
then the people around you aren't going like they're just going to talk about another show in town because
Yep.
there's a lot of good shows in town. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the other part of this. Like we're not there's not 4 blue bloods or 5 blue bloods considering how you look at it. I mean, there's a lot of teams that can do a lot of damage. And look at
Hmm.
Auburn and Alabama. They have basically just taken. Like they could be Carolina Duke in 25 years for
Yep.
kids.
Even when you compare like how Bruce Pearl runs the program too, you can't really go if you're in this world in the college basketball media spaces, like you can't really go a day on Twitter without seeing like Auburn having this very public brand as well. Like they've done a great job
Right.
building that too. And it's, I think when you think about you mentioning the Carolina way, you mentioned in the 2016 team for one, like what these coaches saw was this is actually a stat I came across a couple weeks ago. With like what if you want to look at like what is Carolina basketball? So this team this year in 2025, and I get the game has changed. I get it's different than it was in 2016. They're shooting 33% from three on the year, 214th in the nation. In 2016, when Carolina was runners up to Villanova, 32.7% from three, 259th in the country, but they were still the best offense in the entire nation per Kim Palm's metrics. They were number one because they got easy looks at the rim, they got easy looks in transition, and they dominated the offensive glass and almost won a national championship doing that. Like seeing a stat like that to me, and that's where I would say it's like on and off the court. I like off the court. I think it's good for Carolina to be back in the limelight and the storyline to know how to profile your players, to know how to help them build their brand, not just in college, but when they move on to the next level, beyond just
Yeah.
being on some Fairfield Marriott commercials, which stayed at a stayed at a Fairfield this past weekend. Decent hotel.
Yeah.
Shout out
Nice. Shout
Elliot
out
for
to
that.
Elliot
Yeah.
Cadeau. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
shout
job.
out to Elliot for that one. But there's the on-court aspect, of course, that's like ultimately what's more important with and I'm not saying I want to see Carolina run two bigs who can't shoot or whatever, but you look at a school like Florida right now. Florida literally runs modernized Roy Williams basketball. They
Yep.
got they have a ton of bigs. They play high low with them. They dominate the offensive glass. The bigs can shoot and they can handle better than like most UNC bigs historically. And then they just put a ton of guards who can gun threes around them. Like I love watching Florida hoop, and I would not care. Like, it can't be that. Just steal the Todd Golden playbook, like run what they run, recruit like
Right.
they recruit. And what Florida's done, it's like they're not even bringing in high profile guys from the transfer portal. Because I know Carolina fans right now are love saying like, oh NIL, like we got out NIL or whatever. Like, you mean to tell me like Ruben Chinyelu from Washington State or Alex Condon, who the Florida staff found in Australia, who was playing Aussie leagues football, Aussie rules football. The sport that's similar to rugby.
Yeah.
Um,
There
yeah,
you go.
like I doubt those guys are getting massive paydays. They're just really good talent evaluators, and they run a system that they know who fits for it. And sometimes like through 4 years of like the Hubert Davis tenure, and I don't want to knock his accomplishments. Like that first year, that run was electric. Last year was like such
I
a
feel
breath.
like I'm one of his staunch defenders at this point. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I've had so many different people, text me different times like they're done. And I do have to like send out the resume alert a little bit sometimes where
Yeah,
he did
yeah,
win coach of the year last year.
yeah. It's a good point. It's a good
And he
point.
did go to the national championship game his first year, and he did beat Coach K in Cameron for the last time, and did beat him in the Final Four for his last game ever. And I know that we don't like to belabor that point, and
Mhm.
Duke
Mhm.
fans have made sure that the media doesn't even bring it up. You saw it in the Super Bowl; they didn't even bring up that game. Did you see that they did top moments in Superdome
Oh,
history, didn't even bring up the Carolina Duke Final Four
yes,
game.
I was watching.
Unbelievable that they did not bring that up. That is the world. If Coach K won that game, I promise you, and won the national championship, they would have brought it up. But
How did they were showing highlights of UNC beating
they
Michigan
showed
in
Carolina
'93.
in '82 and '93, but
Yeah, how did
I
they?
needed my trifecta.
Yeah, nothing from
I needed my
2022 is
three-peat. Shout out
insane.
to Pat Riley. I needed my three-peat at the top. That was the last cherry on top there. But yeah, I feel like the Hubert part of it is if he was actually better with the media and maybe
Hmm.
more candid with the media,
Hmm.
and someone who's been in the media, I don't understand why he doesn't play into the character of Hubert that we all love. He's a very fun-loving. Roy Williams just went on the show. I don't even know who it was, but I'm sorry for not knowing. But he basically was like, "In my pinky finger, I care
Yes.
more." And in Hubert Davis's left pinky finger, I promise you, he cares more. And I do feel like that is like Hubert does love Carolina basketball at that type of level, and so does Roy. So like for anyone that doubts that and says like the body language does, I don't blame them for feeling that way because the body language doesn't match that passion at times. but he is Walter Davis's nephew. I mean, he's the most Carolina coach ever, and he did do what he's done so far. And I do feel like with a roster, he could do it again. But what is the identity of this group? The identity is
Mhm.
we need to stretch four. So if we know that, how do we not have the best stretch four in the portal or in high school every single year? You could argue they did this year with Drake Powell. It just hasn't worked out well.
Mhm.
And that alongside the five position and Elliot Cadeau, he turns the ball over or fouls somebody stupidly at the start of games like it's a tick. I don't know what's
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't want to point fingers because Raymond Felton and all those guys already did that, and I thought that was a
Seriously,
little bit messed up.
I
So
agree. The former
I
players
don't
need
like
to
that either.
Former players putting the blame on everybody. Like I'm with you to where I don't want to knock Hubert's accomplishments. At the same time, I felt very frustrated by the lows. Like the volatility is what kills me, and it was sometimes with the former players. I'm like, come on, man. At some point, like
I know.
you got to put some of the blame on the head coach. Like that's how sports work. Like the head coach always ends up with the blame, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Well,
Uh,
what is the Carolina way? What is the Carolina way? The Carolina way is Dean Smith, the players. If we win, the players get the credit. If we lose, I take the blame. Okay, that's what it is, and that's like what it always has been, and that's like what Hubert is like abiding by this playbook. And he's not, he's like I can't step out of those lines, but I agree. Don't do it publicly, but in private step out of those lines. Like
mhm.
let's make sure that those dumb fouls and those dumb turnovers and those bad shots, like let's not make those repeatable habits
Yeah.
because it feels like this season that's what it's become.
Yep. Yep. Man, good discussion on the long term the state of this
Hey,
program.
I
It
believe
was-
I believe in Carolina basketball. Indiana really wants Carolina and Indiana to like kind of, take a bath together and just like, wax nostalgic and poetic about the old days. Like I won't do that. 2017, Carolina won the national championship. They won a championship way more recently than Duke. It was just 2 years, but way more recently than Duke. So like the whole it's over with, we're completely screwed. I'm not quite there because they were a 1 seed last year. I think
Mhm.
they would have made the Final Four if they don't run into the buzzsaw that was Alabama. Alabama's a really good team, also a bad matchup. Also, they had a stretch five that Carolina did not know what to deal with. You know what I mean? Which is something that Hubert Davis feels like he wants to get to a stretch five level. Great. Go find an archetype for Grant Nelson. I just feel like they know what they want to be. Go find it, put it on the
Mhm.
court, win games, make Carolina fans feel like it is what it's supposed to be, and let the rest, play out. If you lose in the Elite Eight, you lose in the Sweet 16, you lose in the Final Four, you lose in the championship game, you win sometimes. As long as you're in the mix, everybody's happy. It's when you're telling us and you're gaslighting fans like it's okay, we got it all figured out,
Yep.
and the eyes never lie, as they say.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to tie a bow on that. Put a lot of my thoughts and feelings to words, even though low key I'm still harboring some probably a little more negativity than you. That's okay. That's okay.
It's
Uh,
okay.
let's close and spend briefly some thoughts on this NC State UNC game coming up.
Right.
NC State's
Well,
bad. UNC's not very good either, but it's a home game. Like I don't know what else there is to say. I'm like that.
I
That might
wish
be
this
what it
game
comes
was
down
good. I wanted this game to be good. I will be honest. I was at the
to.
Final Four last year in Phoenix, and I hadn't had this feeling in a long time, but I was jealous. I
Mm.
watched NC State fans, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching DJ Burns, very fun guy, very likable guy. I got to talk to him a few times, very cool dude. I'm looking at this team and I'm jealous of NC State. And this is, like I said, a year ago. And now, I watched them and they're just a shell of what it was. But I also am like, NC State has this weird voodoo magic where they can just turn it on at any point. So maybe tomorrow's game matters. Maybe like whoever wins tomorrow is going to win the ACC tournament and then go on some magical run in March. I don't know, but there's
Oh,
something in the
man.
water with NC State. I can't tell you the last game. I have to watch too many games. So, like, I can't tell you the last NC State game I watched. Maybe it was early January or maybe it was even the Carolina game. But I suspect if Carolina does not win this game, Hubert Davis is not going to have a fun week. And the message boards will be on fire. So I hope for
Message.
their sake they get it done.
Yeah, I mean they've lost nine in a row before. eking
There you
out a
go.
home win over Boston College, which sadly we can relate to that as well. So I can't even make a joke about that. The gist of this NC State team to me
Yeah.
is like, Keats's MO, he's always going to find a bunch of 6'3" to 6'5" guards and have them playing up tempo and letting them take whatever shot they want. It's
Right.
great when
Pressing
those
and taking terrible shots.
yeah,
Right.
yes, it's great when you have like Jarkel Joyner, Terquavion Smith, and DJ Horn. So it's great. Like, what is that? Like twice out of every 8 years or so. It's bad when it's Marcus Hill, who can't really do anything other than get to the free throw line. Michael O'Connell, his 3-point shooting fell off a cliff again after the March run. I like Ben Middlebrooks. Ben Middlebrooks is a fun, like fiery.
Thought he was going to have a good year. Like I thought O'Connell and Middlebrooks were like enough of a core that you
Mhm.
could put the pieces around of like those athletic guards and figure out which ones are hot at the right time, and he could find the right mix. But for whatever reason, they're just like he opened that piano bar this offseason in Wilmington, and maybe he was just having fun at the piano bar. I mean, it's a Final Four run. Kevin Keats deserves. He got a new contract. Like he deserved a break. So I'm
Yeah, I
happy.
can't blame him. I think what I'm most looking for Carolina, like, and this would say, regardless of how this season unfolds, if they, it's very much in the realm of possibilities they could finish the regular season 7-1. It's very much in the realm of possibilities they could finish it like 3-5. Does Carolina have 8 games or is it seven?
I think it's
It's
7, but
seven. So I just, or is it only six at this point? One, two, three, four, five. Oh, six. Bad on me. Yeah, they could finish it.
time flies. That's like the Rick Pitino, the hour sand glass, like as it's running out. He's like, "You're gonna blink and it's
Yeah,
all gonna be over." That's what's
it is
happening
about
right
to
now
be
for
over.
Carolina
Yeah.
basketball. Yeah, I mean, Joe Lunardi's gonna put in his final declaration very soon, and it'll be over.
What I was trying to communicate is it's very possible Carolina could win the rest of their games aside from the Duke one. It's very possible they could go 500 based on the inconsistencies. I just want to see Captain Jack get the rock. I want Ian Jackson to be great. I want him to continue to pour in 20-point outings. If Carolina misses the tournament, which I think is more likely than not, at least can we boost our 5 stars stock and make sure he goes as close to the lotto, if not in the lotto, as we can. And he's just electric when he's on. I love watching that
The
kid hoop.
best. I love Ian Jackson. I feel like we enjoyed him for like this nice swoon period from like
Mhm.
end of December, early ACC play. He saved them, quite a few times early on, and then he just had this downward spiral. Hit a freshman wall, I guess you can give him credit for.
Mhm.
But like you said, against Syracuse in New York, he's averaging 24 points a game. We need to play in the East region. We need to be playing in Newark. We need to be like the 11 seed. Duke's like the 1 seed. St. John's is the 4 seed. We're all going to be in Newark. We're all going to be in the Sweet 16 together. Carolina's got to go to Dayton first, but Ian Jackson's going to handle business at Dayton. And then I think we all
That
go
is-
to Newark and we see what happens. And we let the
mm,
chips fall where they may. But I agree with you. Let Jalen Withers start. I think he has to start.
Chaos
And
agent.
we, and we,
Why
and we
not?
live and we live with what happens. You know what I mean? Because he can do anything, and he can also do anything. It works both ways. So I think he's got to start, and then I do feel like Ian Jackson, like you said, we need at least 10 shots. I need double-digit shots every
Yes.
game. As
Facts.
long as we get to that checkpoint, I'm okay. But I need 10. RJ, can you give him 5? Can you give him 3? Can you give him a few? Because he's shooting 37%, by the way, in ACC play, so he's trending up. RJ, so that's
Oh
good.
yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. Yeah, should be might not be the most aesthetically pleasing game. A big one for Carolina nonetheless. Great discussion with Tate Frazier. Thank you as always,
Of
Tate, for being
course.
on. Hope the listeners enjoy, getting a little big picture stuff and also the immediacy of a little preview, talking the game that will be happening tonight by the time this airs. So appreciate you.
Yep, go watch it and yeah, enjoy Carolina basketball. Let's hope for 6-0. Then we could put up the 6. That'd be great. Thanks again, Riley.